Hi, I'm James McGuire, and today we're talking about hybrid cloud and networking and the overall state of today's cloud market. A lot to keep up with. To discuss that, I'm joined by a major thought leader in the sector. With me is Kaustubh, Vice President and General Manager of Cloud and Compute at Cisco. Kaustubh, good to have you with us today.
James, it's a pleasure to be here.
And I know that they normally also call you KD, correct? So I would also call you KD in the process.
Yes, please do. It's too complicated otherwise.
I really like the background. You've got some interesting art on your wall there. What's going on with that art?
It's actually AI art. This is machines trying to imagine our human world and putting it on canvas.
Okay.
It's interesting.
So really, we have with the robots are artists these days. We know they're doing all sorts of important things in the cloud and in enterprise IT world, but they're also robots are now artists apparently.
Well, we'll take creativity from wherever it comes, whether it's human, organic, or machine.
Absolutely, why not? Well, I want to ask you about your sense of where the cloud market is now. It seems like there's quite a bit of transition and going on. I mean, we've got, of course, cloud native. Everyone is searching for that cloud native solution. Multi-cloud is very, very big. Hybrid cloud feels like it has become a dominant form. I mean, there was talk several years ago it's going to be everything is going to move to the public cloud, and that's all that there's going to be. The data center is going to die. Turns out here in 2021 that hasn't happened. It seems like hybrid cloud is very big from what I see. What is your sense of where we are with the cloud market, and what's a couple of trends you think are shaping things?
Yeah, great question to start off with. So there's a few things going on. First of all, applications are key, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
But the way applications are being built is transitioning. Clearly, we're going from monoliths to virtualized to containerized and cloud native and eventually serverless. So that is leading to these kind of proliferation of microservices that are interconnected together, which raises which brings with it a lot of innovation, but it also brings with it a lot of complexity that needs to be managed. The other piece that's happening is where applications are going to be deployed and these microservices are going to be deployed is actually getting more and more distributed. So we have things at the edge, things in the data center, in the core data centers, and things in the public cloud. And all of these need to work with each other to deliver the user experience that we're trying to deliver. And our customers and companies around the world eventually are going to be measured on that user experience and how consistent is it and how rich is it and how innovative it is. So that is a key trend that's affecting everything. And then the second piece you alluded to it a little bit, James, is as this happens, innovation is coming at us from a lot of places and coming at us, and there's great innovation in the public cloud. There's great innovation in open source, just a ton coming from open source and the startup community and so forth. There's a ton coming from providers and vendors like us. And that is the volume and the richness is very different than it's ever been, and that's a good problem. That's a good thing.
Right.
Now the complexity is that as a IT professional, as a cloud operations professional, as a innovator and a business unit, as a developer, you've got to take what is a brilliant idea and make it a robust solution. And a robust solution means that it just needs to work, it needs to be up, it needs to be able to scale. And that is what I think everybody is starting to struggle with. It's like there's all this richness of innovation. How do we make that a robust solution and take it out into the world? So those are some of the things that's happening. You mentioned hybrid and multi-cloud, and that is the third big trend, which is that every time somebody brings a new tool to the market, it doesn't replace the old tool, it adds to the tools in the toolbox. And so now we've got more tools in the toolbox. We've got open source innovation, we've got public cloud, we've got core data centers we own, we've got edge locations. But there's there's one thing that hasn't changed, which is the team that's managing it is still the team that's managing it. So in some ways, multi-cloud happens within you as a cloud operator. You're managing 1 or 2 or 3 public cloud IaaS. You're managing multiple SaaS. You're managing your core data centers. You're managing edge. And when you do that, you need to do 2 things. One is you need to have a uniformity of model of kind of operating model across all of those estates, because or else the other option is to splinter your teams, which is not scalable. The second thing is we need to have a cloud-like operating model. There's a new way of operating, which is much more programmatic and API driven, and that has tremendous benefits. So adopting a new operating model, a cloud-like operating model, and having uniformity of operating model across a multi-cloud and your hybrid cloud estate, I think that's the third big trend.
It's interesting to talk about cloud as an operating model. I mean, really, in a sense, cloud is an operating system in itself, and which creates a lot of complexity. I mean, you talked about the microservices architecture. Of course, that is such an improvement over the old monolithic way of building software. But then it does create a lot of complexity because suddenly there's these modular pieces. And at the same time, edge computing is becoming really, really big. And so edge computing is far more complex than merely just a good old-fashioned data center in one place. And microservices is far more complex than a monolithic architecture. And so I think a lot of the customers are saying, we're excited about this stuff, but we're so confused, we don't even know what to do. I don't know what my question is, but just like, how is the customer supposed to deal with the complexity of that?
Yeah, and I think, first of all, stay calm. It's going to be fine.
Okay, we'll try.
But secondly, I think it's a good thing in general, because with complexity brings opportunity as long as you're able to kind of handle it, right? So the key is to do 2 things. One is every customer, every enterprise has a certain current reality, and which is going to be slightly different for everyone. So I think we got to figure out as a customer, as a company, as where are we starting from, and how do we evolve from there to bridge to where we want to go. So any model one puts in place, any model for management, any model for app development, any model for uptime assurance, operations, needs to kind of maintain the current and bridge to the future.
Right.
And I mean that's some of what that's been a guiding principle for us as we've tried to innovate in the space, is to help customers with that piece of it. The second thing is commonality. If the more one has a cloud neutral, and I'm using the word cloud broadly to include private, public, hybrid, multi, any flavor, the more one has a cloud neutral stance and operating model, the easier it gets. And sometimes people confuse this to mean that, oh, well, are you saying I'm going to move necessarily workloads between clouds? You may or may not. But you will simplify your life and the lives of your teams if you have a common operating model, or else you'll just have splintered processes and it's going to become really complicated really soon. So a common operating model, I think, is key. Bridging from where you are is key as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're past the point where we say, well, what model is going to win? It's going to be hybrid's going to take over. It's going to be public. It's going to be private. Like, no. Actually, the point is they all have to work together. Which brings me to, I know Cisco has recently unveiled a new hybrid cloud platform. I mean, what is distinct about that? I mean, how will it ease the challenge the customers face in the cloud?
Yeah. Maybe I should start with a little bit of background and talk about what we talked about last couple of weeks back. And
yes.
We recognized these trends a few years back, and in particular, the first thing we recognized was, I think you made a comment, James, about edge being even more complex because it's of the distributed nature. We started seeing some of these things, and we created Intersight. Intersight is the world's simplest hybrid cloud platform. We created Intersight as a always connected SaaS service to manage a highly distributed world, which includes edge, core data center, public cloud, multiple public clouds.
All right.
Initially, we created it actually with the edge in mind, because we were noticing the problem that you just noticed. But where we've taken it, I know this is what we've talked about over the last months and years, is towards some of the trends that I was talking about, is to have that cloud neutral tooling and to have that cloud operating model, a common cloud operating model across any flavor of cloud, hybrid, public, private. Some of the things we talked about over the last few months, for example, was one of the services in Intersight is a service for infrastructure as code, and we worked with a partner, in this case, HashiCorp, to deliver that to the market. It's the Intersight service for HashiCorp, Terraform. And as companies are embracing this new cloud operating model, infrastructure as code and Terraform in particular is fast becoming a de facto way to orchestrate your assets. And we wanted to deliver Terraform, deliver infrastructure as code in a common way, whether you're using it in the public cloud or on your private cloud. And that's what the integration between these two assets did with the Intersight service for HashiCorp Terraform. Now that's one way of orchestrating. There's also a more contemporary way, whether it's using custom scripts or Ansible or other techniques, and that may be part of a lot of people's reality, and we recognize that. And so there are other services within Intersight, such as the Intersight Cloud Orchestrator, that help provide a low-code automation method for orchestration, but also a method that is resilient, something that has a log history, something that has a rollback. What if you fat finger something, and how do I kind of make sure I gracefully get back to the state I was?
We all need an undo.
Yeah, we've all been there, right? So, so those are some of the things that we've talked about over the last few months and quarters. What we recently announced was two interesting aspects. One was new services within Intersight, and in particular, I'll talk about one in particular. This is around the Intersight Service Mesh Manager, which is an add-on to our Intersight Kubernetes service. So the Intersight Kubernetes service is a container as a service platform delivered from Intersight, which allows for IT and cloud operations teams to deliver that kind of container as a service platform for developers to build new cloud native applications off of. Now, as we talked about microservices and how these get splintered and need to connect each other, Istio has fast emerged as a mechanism for that microservice connectivity. Now the good thing and the bad thing is, the good thing is that Istio is tremendously powerful. It's loved by developers. It's certainly not the only way to do it, but it's certainly one of the leading ways to do it. But when it comes to operators need to visualize and be able to have a much more operational view of this microservice connectivity. And that is what the Service Mesh Manager does for operators. And they can now do things like visualize how these microservices are kind of interconnected, visualize how the traffic flows are happening, visualize how policy is set up, and be able to kind of change that policy across these microservices. Be able to do things like canary deployments by steering a small portion of traffic to a new service that you're trying to light up or test in the. So those are the kinds of things that we are giving operators tooling to be able to embrace the new world, be able to be to light up the innovation that all this innovation, all this tooling, all this kind of new technology is giving them, but also do it in a very enterprise resilient manner. And the third big thing that we talked about in our recent past is the X series. So any hybrid cloud estate needs to have modern platforms to rest your private cloud on. We have been innovating on this dimension for a long time, but we also, I think maybe got a little bit lucky with the timing, but there's just the breadth of technology innovation that is happening in kind of PCIe, Gen 4, Gen 5, Gen 6, CXL coming to the market, all of the innovation that Intel and the processor vendors are bringing to the market, everything that's happening on the media and storage front, was calling for a private cloud platform that can be assembled from the cloud. So that's what the X series is. It's a place to rest your private cloud, but it's more than just a server. It's a server that's assembled from the cloud. It's controlled by Insight. It is configured by Insight. It's able to take all of those incredible pieces of incredible kind of horsepower and innovation that Intel and the other vendors are bringing to the space, but be able to control that, configure that, orchestrate that via SaaS from the cloud, and be able to manage that through a very connected mechanism, which allows for these things to become pools of resources that you can then deploy and kind of meld to the workload demands. So that's what we announced with X Series. X Series works with Insight, and all of the richness of Insight comes along with it. By the way, all the richness of Insight and everything we're doing across the Cisco landscape, which includes obviously the work we do with AppD. So being able to kind of look from application all the way down into infrastructure, have that full stack observability view of things, but also have the ability to actually assemble and morph this hybrid cloud, this private cloud piece of the hybrid cloud from the cloud. So those are some of the highlights. There's a lot to cover, and I know we wouldn't have time to go through every one of them.
Well, interesting. You talk about being able to spin up a hybrid cloud, a private cloud from the cloud itself, which is pretty interesting. How does that, what do you say to those companies to say, hey, we have a private cloud in our data center. We run it on, VMware, for instance. What is the solution you're talking about? Why would it be different or better than a company saying, well, we have a private cloud in our data center, or in some instances we have a private cloud in the cloud. So what does the Insight solution do that is different from that?
Yeah, so I think it differs in a few different places. The first thing is to really operate a private cloud, you need to go all the way from the application layer all the way down to infrastructure layer.
Right.
And whether it is solutions, and all companies bring, VMware is an innovative company. It has got tons of innovation that brings to the market, but the ability to go all the way from the application, beyond the virtualization layer, all the way down into the infrastructure is key, because when we have either a performance issue or a cost issue, and by the way, this could happen private or public, right? It could happen in hybrid world.
Okay.
Being able to being able to tell what's my state of application, what's it running on, where does it rest, what are the bottlenecks in the system? Is it a database issue? Is it a load balancer issue? Is it a network issue? It could be either of those, and it can show up. I like to think about, when you leave something on the stove for too long and the fire alarm goes off,
right?
Every room starts ringing, and you don't know, well,
could be anywhere, right? We don't know where it is,
but everybody's complaining, right? So I think that's being able to rapidly get to have a view of the estate that's full stack is key. So that's one key thing. That's one thing that we bring because of our breadth of portfolio that goes all the way from apps to infra, and all the way from data center to the user. We didn't talk too much about Thousand Eyes. That's another key part of our portfolio that Cisco brings. Thousand Eyes goes all the way from the user to the data center or to the cloud, and now we're able to go left to right to figure out where the bottlenecks are, top to bottom to figure out where the bottlenecks are, and have an optimized experience, have an observable experience all the way through. So that's one thing. The second piece is to have I talked about cloud neutral. tooling, and a common operating model. I think that's the other differentiator. Is what we're doing is we're not necessarily picking, a preferred approach. We know companies are going to have multiple tools in the toolbox, of which multiple public clouds will be part of it, and a private cloud will be part of it, and edge will most likely be part of it. So, so a common operating model that's cloud neutral is the other piece that is differentiated. And then the other piece is on the X series itself. That platform is truly revolutionary. It really is blurring the lines across what kind of infrastructure you pick. I mean, just to give an example, the amount of time it takes from the point a piece of infrastructure, storage, compute, network, shows up on the loading dock of a person who's running a private data center, to the time you bring an application up, needs to transact. It's long, and it has handoffs between multiple teams. There's somebody who's got to configure the server. There's somebody who's got to put the network policies on. There's a team that needs to put the operating systems on. Then there's an application team. Having all of that converged into one tooling, into one uniform tooling, is huge. And that's what we're bringing to the market. What that does is it takes that friction out of bringing infrastructure up and shrinks that timeline, takes that friction out of the system, so that we can worry about other things. There'll always be something to worry about. But
there's no doubt about that. So if we think about the future, what we'll be worrying about in the future in terms of the cloud, interested to get your thoughts about where we're going, maybe 2, 3, 4 years out. What is the cloud going to look like at that point? And what role is AI going to play in it? Of course, AI is becoming so dominant these days. And when KD, when are we finally going to get our personal jetpacks? So that by the year 2021, we would have our personal jetpacks. So if you can answer that, but the real question is, what does the future of cloud look like to you?
James, I'm waiting for that jetpack, but I want to make sure my COVID mask doesn't fly off and it takes off. So we'll have to work on that design spec. It's always hard to predict, especially the future, right? So I think what we should look at is we know that the pace of innovation is going to increase. We know that the open source is going to be a rich part of that story going forward, and as well as all the pieces. The idea is, how do we get out of the business of prediction, and how do we make sure we have the investment protection, the ability to make the most of all this innovation that's coming to us, right? So I think that is it is clear that there'll be more and more techniques to build applications, to monitor, to be able to orchestrate, to be able to manage, troubleshoot, and all. I think the key would be to focus on 2 mantras, which is, one is a common operating model. The more commonality you have, the less you have to worry about splintered focus areas and resources. And then just being able to say, hey, how do I know change is going to happen in terms of the technologies I use. How do I make sure I'm ready for that? And really leverage that in a good way to kind of push me into the future. AI is an interesting one. You brought that up. I should touch on that. AI is going to build itself into every part of whatever we do. Including our artwork, but it'll we have Innersight is driven off of intelligence that is built off of proprietary signatures that we have from we know what happens before things go wrong, and being able to be proactive about that is huge, and this is where I think managing machines frees up humans to focus on innovation. I used to remember, or I mean, it still exists actually right now, is there are when when a security advisory comes out,
Mm-hmm.
still emails and notices that go out.
Mm-hmm.
When compatibility lists of what works with what comes out, that's still a very document-oriented world.
Mm-hmm.
All of that can be sped up through intelligence, whether it's ML/AI or whether it's some other kinds of intelligent techniques. And that is happening. That's what we've done with Intersight. And Intersight is fully telemetry enabled. It's got advisories, it's got HCL compliance, it's got proactive. Sometimes our customers know after a problem's been fixed already that there was a problem, but it's been taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's increasingly that'll be the world we go. That kind of being proactive and being able to have really augmented systems that augment our ability to react faster, better, and in a more directed manner are going to be part of our lives. And I think we should embrace that. That is huge. We're certainly focusing on driving more innovation on that front. And that will then enable us to do more creative things, to really focus on user experience and application richness and business results and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the idea of commonality there, I think, is really key, because with a fragmented system, I think you really can't move forward. At any rate, KD, I'm going to hold out for my jetpack, and in the process, I want to thank you very much for sharing your expertise today. I definitely learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. It's been a pleasure.